everyone, and welcome to the next episode of LEXclusive, the podcast hosted by PaperStreet Web Design and Marketing. As always, I'm your host, Nancy, and today we're going to do things a little bit differently today. Not only do we have a special guest with us today, but this guest is actually a client of ours for many, many years. I'm joined by Alex, our Vice President and Internet Marketing Director. Hi, Alex. And
Hello.
then Alex and I would like to introduce you to Jay Stafford. Jay is an attorney of a client of ours. He was from my neck of the woods when I was in DC, and he's been with us for many, many years. So we're going to use him to give us a little bit of feedback on the other side of things. So not just what PaperStreet thinks about marketing and things like that, but what a fellow client of ours and just a solo practitioner who's grown his business quite a bit now to give his side of things as well. So hi, Jay. How are you today?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks. Thank you so much for joining us. Jay, just because our audience hasn't met you yet, can you give us a little bit of information about yourself?
Yeah, as Nancy said, Jay Stafford. I have an employment law firm in Columbia, Maryland. I started my law practice back in 2016 as a solo practitioner. Prior to that, worked at a few law firms in Baltimore and in New Orleans, and decided in 2016 to open my own practice. And a few years after opening, sort of really focused in on employment law. And I think I've been a client with you guys since around 2018, 2019. Don't quote me on that. Time flies a little faster than I like these days. But that's a little bit of background about me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is 2018 because it was right when I first joined PaperStreet. I was still working with you right away. So you've been with me that entire step of the way there as well. Okay,
Yeah.
what made you decide to open your own practice?
Yeah, I mean, it's as I think about it, I came out of law school like sort of during the financial crisis, right? And a lot of a lot of classmates, were going through. It was a challenging time, and
Hmm.
one of the things I remember at one of the firms I worked at was like, a question I had for one of the sort of the big partners that they kind of fly in, to do your yearly evaluation, said, look, I want to, what would I need to do to start bringing in my own clients? And he said, you don't need to worry about that. Like you just like literally, you don't need to worry about that. All we want you to do is bill. And, one of the things look, I mean, my background is econ and business, from undergrad. I was like, well, that doesn't sound like a recipe for long-term success in terms of not having your own clients. And so one of the things after, we moved to New Orleans and decided to come back to the Baltimore area. And one of the things I said was, well, this is as good a time as any to start my own business, to have my own practice and to kind of give it a go. And, and that's why I wanted to kind of have my own practice. Like, look, you have a business that you can kind of build and develop and help even more people as opposed to just being a lawyer at a firm, billing hours. Like I wanted to be able to like, hey, we have a business that's operational. We employ people, we work with clients, and that's really where I wanted to go with this. And so that's why I opened up my own shop.
That's an interesting perspective too, because I had a similar boat when I graduated from law school. It's the same thing. There was a lot of hiring freeze. A
Hmm.
lot of my classmates started working as paralegals. They weren't even getting legal jobs. I knew one classmate of mine, top of her class, yet she was doing bartending at night because she wasn't getting the law job that
Yep.
she wanted. And I think there was a lot of fear of starting your own practice. So kudos to you for having the gumption and the bravery to do that. I think it's a real admirable thing to go out there and do that on your own when I know I wasn't brave enough to do that, nor were a lot of my classmates. And in fact, now, 15 years out, some of my classmates are just doing it now. And I think that it's really something that you got started so early and that you've had such success since then. What led you to employment law specifically?
Well, it gives you sort of a taste of both litigation and sort of counsel and advice, right? Like, you know, my background is sort of complex commercial litigation, right? And with employment, we're doing a lot in federal court. We're also sort of advising clients, and working with them pre-litigation because, with employment, is like any other sort of complex sort of litigation. Like sometimes the answer isn't always file a lawsuit. So I like sort of doing both. I like sort of advising people like, hey, here's how we can help you maybe get what you want, without sort of going through the time expense associated with litigation. So employment kind of allows me to do both of those things, and that's why I like employment. And with employment as well, so much of people's identity and financial stability is based on like, hey, having a job. And with employment, we're really able to, I think, help people a lot. Because it is so critical to everything that happens. Keeping somebody, getting justice for somebody who's been wrongly terminated, or helping a doctor negotiate a better contract. I mean, all that stuff has value, and that's what I wanted to, that's why employment.
Well, it helps my husband, so thank you for that.
No, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. No, thank you.
Well, Jay, we've seen it here at Paper Street, but I think it's admirable again to talk about how much your practice has grown over the years. You're not just a solo practitioner who's making ends meet. You've turned yourself. You're not a solo practitioner anymore. You have an associate and things like that. So just shine a little light on how you've grown in just such a short period of time, and then we're going to evaluate that process too.
Yeah. So I think when I first contacted you guys, I was definitely only a solo. Like it was just me. I was working in the basement of my house. Um, and it was definitely a different situation. It's grown. We've grown significantly. We're not like a huge firm, but I like where we're at. I like the trajectory we're on. It's one of those things where we started off with just me. We added an intake person who is now our paralegal. And now we've grown to a total of 6 people, including me. We're looking to bring on another associate as well. So, I mean, we've definitely grown, and just during that whole process, I think working with you guys certainly been a huge part of that success. I remember the first time I had a conversation with Alex. I don't think I initially signed up because I was like, this is, it's a little expensive. But, as I was thinking yesterday, getting ready for this, I was like, as a first time business owner, you think of things differently. When you're thinking of, engaging with somebody like you guys, like I'm thinking about, oh, okay, my profit and loss says I can only afford this, right? But the question I've kind of gone through this and seen things, the question I think business owners need to ask is, can you afford not to hire somebody like you guys, or somebody like a business coach, somebody who can take your growth trajectory from, like, hey, this is how long, like if you're thinking of like a football field, like, hey, it's going to take you, let's say 20 yards to get to first down. With Can you afford not to hire somebody who can take it from like, hey, taking you from 20 yards to, hey, you've only got 5 yards to now get a touchdown or first down. I mean, like to really compress the time it takes for you to see growth. And that's, one of the things it's like, because I think I waited maybe 9 months, a year. It's like, how much faster could I have grown during that time? And then also, one of the things I think about as well is going back to a conversation with Alex during the pandemic, when it was like, hey, Alex, I got to turn the spend down. Alex said, Jay, I'm telling you, that's the wrong move. And again, not being as wise as I am now, it's like I should have listened to Alex. And we recovered, but it's like I should have turned the volume up on the marketing. And that, again, how much faster could I have gotten to that first down, touchdown. Again, just listening to, that advice.
No discredit to you. You're a fantastic lawyer. You've got a great personality. You really care about your clients. But and this because I'm a more of the marketing consultant now with PaperStreet. So I talk to all of our clients, and it's the same thing that I have with them. It's a lot of what you're saying. It's like you have a great reputation. I'm not denying that. You are a great lawyer. I'm not denying that either. But at some point, you have to think about growing your practice because what if? What if there's another COVID? What
Yep.
if the law changes substantially and you lose a chunk of your cases? And I really talk about the status quo and making sure that there is always one by having marketing in place. So if something bad happens, whatever it may be, another pandemic, whatever, what we were never expecting, do you have the safety net of a reputation online or in marketing that will carry you should something happen? Whatever it may even be something good. What if you're a really great practice and you have millions of dollars coming in, but no one knows who you are? How will you get new attorneys to work for you?
Exactly.
Alex, you're in a little bit of a different position because the clients have already signed when they come to you. But what are some of the conversations that you have that are like what Jay expressed, where that concern about spending even when they're doing well? How do you talk to our clients about that?
Uh, so first, I want to correct one thing, which is kind of a nice thing to see. I actually look back, Jay, when we all started working together. It was actually 2016. So,
Oh man,
so
Wow.
yeah,
I
so we're
signed up
actually
sooner than I thought.
so actually it's yeah,
Good,
we're
good.
we're we're 1 year shy of a decade here. So
Nice, nice.
and actually we just passed the anniversary of when we all met each other. So
Awesome.
Nancy, to answer your question, and Jay, to kind of leverage off a little bit of what you were just talking about. uh I mean, candidly, you're a massive part of that success, like Nancy's saying. Honestly, it has a lot to do. We've written blog posts about it, we've talked about it 1,000 times, but especially this is like, what a more appropriate time to say it than to say it right now. But you're the analogy I always use, and everybody knows I use analogies all the time. You're the general, we're the soldiers. We might be, I might be your lieutenant, sort of thing. Like, I'm going to give you that consultation. I'm not going to be bashful about what I think you should be doing. But on the flip side, you make the calls, and to Nancy's point and to Nancy's question, um, a lot of the success that you have is your engagement, is how much you get back in touch with us, how much you care. Honestly, it's one of those things where, I'll put it this way: our entire team hears from you and knows you and knows the firm and knows your employees at the firm. It is an engagement, and it's like a call response sort of thing of what I'm getting at, where if we're there and we're giving a recommendation, it doesn't go 2 months without hearing back.
Yep.
If we send content, you guys review it right away. If we talk to you all about link opportunities or something to increase SEO, you guys evaluate that and get back in touch with us as quickly as we talk to you. And it can't be ironic, I guess is my point. And I say that to all of our clients. The more engagement that you have, this is not to be cheesy or corny, but it's organic. It is a growing organic, item that you have to tend to and have to foster and have to, like, be there to kind of make adjustments. As you and I have seen over the years, there might be a phrase that's doing great and then it drops, or a phrase that's doing, the competitors are biting at our heels, and we have to organically adapt. But a lot of that, input and feedback and direction comes from you all, because we're looking at data. We're looking at numbers. We're looking at stuff that, to us, it basically could be circumstantial, of like, do we go after this? Do we go after that? For us, it might all equate to the same thing, but to you all, that might be massively important, or you might be like, it's lower tiered importance. So, though, that relationship and the relationship that we have with you all is vital. It's critical. It's what, made this campaign as successful as it is. Honestly, I mean, to summarize it, we couldn't have done it without you all, like the way that, we've grown.
We're going to talk more about Jay, but what's really important is you don't always have to choose PaperStreet as your marketing agency. There are great agencies out there, but if you feel you're just a cog in the machine, that's not the agency for you. And like I said, I've talked to a lot of clients that come to PaperStreet before they meet with Alex, and they'll say, "I didn't like SEO because this company was making changes without me." And I'm like, "Well, that's not a good company." Or they were saying, "Oh, I don't even know what was going on with my Google ads. I never wanted to Google ads again." Well, again, that's not a good marketing company. I mean, we didn't have to explain the nitty gritty of everything. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'm not even remotely half as good at understanding what works for pay per click as what doesn't compared to Drew, our Google Ads manager. But you should have that partnership. And I think that that's really important. And I think our most successful clients are clients like Jay that have always been really active and participated with us and engaged with us. With that note, let's take a deeper dive into that. So, Jay, you tell us what marketing you've done with PaperStreet and your perspective on it as the non-expert in the industry. And then, Alex, I would love for you to chime in about what you think worked well, so we could kind of put this together for the audience to hear what the attorneys think, and then what our side of things would look like.
Yeah, I mean, I think the majority of everything I've done has been SEO for sure. And then also new websites with you guys, which is a huge part of getting a better SEO result because the initial website I had, I think, was, one of those sort of off the store shelf kind of websites that I didn't get from PaperStreet. But I remember sort of early on, and again, I'm getting older, Alex. But so correct me if I'm wrong. But I remember early on, Alex was like, "Jay, look, we really need to get you in a new website that is more SEO, I'll call efficient." And again, him and hawing, I was like, Alex, can't afford it yet. But I initially, at some point, I pulled the trigger, and not too long of an order, we saw the SEO results really step up because, again, not appreciating, how much that back end of the website matters. I think was a big thing. But once I saw the results, like, okay, here we go. That's what Alex has been saying. Uh, Follow directions next time, Jay. Like, literally, follow directions. That was literally follow directions next time. And
It's not directions, it's recommendations,
yeah, you call it.
but
Hey, yeah,
but
but
yeah,
yeah,
that analogy I use there, Jay, is again, to use yet another one. It's like buying a car, or it's like somebody's kitchen or bathroom is actually the perfect analogy because everybody, especially maybe like a kitchen, everybody loves their kitchen. It's kind of where families, spend a large majority of their time. Then all of a sudden you go over somebody else's house and their kitchen is like, whoa, this is really nice kitchen. And then you go back and look at your kitchen and you're like, wow, this is antiquated, and using that analogy, Google kind of sees that with sites. So, they basically say the latest and greatest, the more efficient, maybe cars are even in a better analogy where, especially as things change over the years, it's, you got blind spot detection, you got, rear view cameras, and now all sensing cameras, and all these things that kind of help from like a safety feature, where I look back at my car and it has like a cassette tape. No, I'm kidding, it's not that old, but maybe, but but I mean, the point being is that Google wants that latest and greatest. And on a serious side, when the site is built out that way, not only does it help on a user perspective, and it helps just on a human level of converting and looking like the latest and greatest and having that sense and feel, but on a technical side, it's just that much more efficient. And Google's indexing it quicker. They're being able to read the content a little bit quicker. They're looking at the value of the site a little bit quicker. So, all those reasons. But yeah, like we were talking about before, the a lot of it though is predicated off what we're building this off of. The website, and I think you and I had talked about this over the years. It's showing that ROI, and it's then reinvesting the money that's coming into the firm. I think my number one takeaway, not only for you but for all of our clients, is just wait till you start seeing that ROI, wait till you start getting that return, and then reinvest it in yourself. Reinvest it in the firm, reinvest it in things like the website, so that, to your point that you made earlier about, can you afford not to do this? It's that once you then can afford it, and that is the end goal, that you can then leverage to keep building off, for yourself, like into the firm, and then, kind of paying the firm back, if you will. And it's in things like, everything from not only just the monetary value of the firm or just expansion of the firm and new attorneys, but things like we're talking about, the additional marketing. It might be more marketing, it might be website updates, all those sort of things that ultimately lead back to the firm, to you. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's huge. I mean,
Truthfully, when I talk to other clients, I do talk about you, Jay, as a success story of PaperStreet, not necessarily because you're our only one, although you're a favorite of mine. But one of the reasons
thanks.
why I talk about you is because I think your growth plan of how the campaign has evolved so much is what I think clients need to have in mind. You started out in a city, and we were trying to rank you for a city, get you exposure there. Then we cried statewide because you were doing so well in the city. Okay, we can grow statewide. Okay, now you're growing statewide. Now we're looking at DC, East Coast locations, things like that. And I really think that a lot of times, sometimes you really have to realize that you could do well and you can keep being successful in a city or just a state. But when you have a really good marketing plan, it'll allow you to grow that much more. Now, you don't have to take over the United States. You may not want to manage a practice that's, working in Canada and things like that. But that
Yeah.
being said, you shouldn't, lawyers as a whole should not put a stop on, well, I don't need to grow anymore. I don't need to do this because I'm secure here, because you don't know how successful you could be. And Alex, what do you think that Jay did with his campaign that actually helped us grow him the most? What do you think, aside from his engagement, what would you say was a huge factor in how the SEO campaign evolved?
Yeah, it's actually what you were just mentioning now, Nancy. I think it's the collaboration of us working together, and candidly, I think Jay's trust in us, that a lot of it stems from monthly meetings that we consistently have and never really miss. And it's going through that evolution. Again, to use an analogy to your point, Nancy, the analogy, I'm a big student of history, particularly like warfare history. And as I always mention, I'll mention like World War II, for example. There is that taking of a town that would then allow for, a province or a county to be taken, that would then allow for, yeah, essentially a country to be taken, for us to, to kind of go through to win the war, so to speak. And that analogy applies for marketing, and an analogy applies for the objectives of firms if they do choose to expand to that great distance. And again, and actually, I would say again, the conversation of it being um, the mutual respect, if you will. When Jay and I talk about strategies, there might be times where, and I would say we're in a war with your competitors, right? It does apply. But when we might say to expand and go, and we're, going maybe out of our normal area of where we would be expanding to, we evaluate that. And I would argue very heavily that both Jay and I, if we recognize, this isn't working, like we're going too far out or something, we reel it in, and that's what's so great about it, because it is very, very much, it sounds cheesy and corny and cliche, but it is that team collaboration. It is working together, then saying, do we push a certain portion to expand it, or do we kind of reel it back in to then, kind of hyper focus on what is working and executing the best, and that's where I think things have gone so successfully well. It's just, constantly shifting and adjusting and altering our objective to kind of match not only what we see on the data side, but what you all see on the firm side, where you're getting those potential new clients from. Is this, kind of hitting the objective of expanding out to a certain area? And then are you getting clients from that area? And if you're not, well, then let's reel it back in to hyper focus on what is getting you the best return. That's as everybody can hear from my probably repeating of the same thing, my biggest focus is not only the transparency and the collaboration of us all working together, but it's focusing on the firm's return on investment. That's my biggest driver, How can we make you that much more successful? And then that's, again, kind of aligns with what we're ultimately trying to do. So.
Jay, I like your perspective on that because, we here at Paper Street, we're, Alex and I talk about all the time, we're very data driven. We're just like, okay, we do this because this and things like that. But for you, not all the data I'm sure makes sense. I mean, we don't expect you to be an SEO genius when you sign with Paper Street. What do you think allowed for you to trust us the most? What do you think helps establish trust, and how do you think you fit with us?
I think things. One, Alex is very clear and about expectations. It's not like it's going to be like turning a light switch on like with Google Ads, because I was very intentional and meeting with Alex once a month, and then if hey, I need to get him on the horn sooner, being there. And not always, it's like one of those things where it's like I know with some of the other folks I talk to with other SEO companies, there's always this constant pitch. Alex, it was none of this constant pitch. It's like, hey, Jay, where do you want to be? Here's what we need to do to get you there. And it's not like, hey, try this, try that. Like, no, it's like, hey, here's our strategy. Let's stick to it and give it time to work. And it works. And so that's, Alex has been my guy from the beginning. And I love working with him. I trust him. Um, and it's like everything else. It's like I realize when I'm working with somebody who's committed to my success versus just increasing, the revenue for the company, for their company. It's not. I don't feel like I'm on a sales pitch at all. And that's why it's like, hey, let me sign up for this podcast. I'm more than happy to do it because, like, Alex, I trust him 100%.
We
Thanks, Jay.
appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's something because I came across data from Martindale Hubble, actually. Well, now it's Martindale Novo. I'm not used to that yet. But anyway, Martindale reported that only 26% of lawyers are actually tracking their leads and where that's coming from. So they're not actually even paying attention to their client acquisition at all. They're not tracking their leads at all. What do you see with your peers? Do you see that as well? And why do you think that so many attorneys are just losing that interest in that? Obviously, none of us can say for sure. We're all just kind of speculating. But what are your thoughts on that?
Look, I'll be honest with you. Like, initially, I wasn't tracking either. Alex again was like, Jay, hey, think about getting call rail, and and I did that. And we now use a CRM where we're tracking those leads. I think with lawyers, they don't teach us to be business owners, and
Mm,
that's it's like law school teaches you how to practice law. It doesn't teach you a thing about how to run a business. Like, you go to other businesses, they can tell you where the clients come from. They can tell you how much per client they spend, per client spends. They can tell you a whole thing of data about their customers. Lawyers, like we don't, most of us, there's some that do, but most of us don't. We weren't trained that way. We weren't, thought to give that as much importance. But it's one of those things where it's like, as you live and you learn as you grow this business, like that's a key aspect. Like, where should you be spending your time in terms of marketing, in terms of investment in marketing, and that matters. And so we're getting better about that. I'm getting better about that. And it's, help with Alex, you guys helping me kind of see that. And some of the members of my team here helping me really like sort of hone in like, hey, here's where we need to be spending time in terms of the videos we make, the content that we're sort of helping build alongside PaperStreet. So that's been the key. Absolutely.
It's been one of my biggest recommendations for all clients, which is that, how critical it is to kind of track where those leads are coming from, because it goes back to whatever adage you want to say, working smarter, not harder sort of thing. Or one of my favorite quotes of all time was, I know 50% of my marketing is wasted. I just don't know which half, So doing that and looking at where those leads are coming from kind of tracks that ambiguity. If it works that out, it figures it out for us. It basically says, here is where we're getting the benefit, here's where we're not, and again, through the years, because like we've been talking about, we've been working with Jay and the firm for a really long time. There have definitively been times where we've seen and tried other ventures, like in the AdWords side, and collectively we're like, let's shut it down. Like
Yeah.
we're getting a much better return, and it's a much better investment off of SEO, for example, organic SEO, and that's money better spent. And to Jay's point, there might be times in that where we basically go, this isn't worth spending more money, even on the SEO side. This is humming along. This is at the temperature that it needs to be, so to speak. And so, don't put more money into this. Like, let's ride this out and like see how this starts returning. But all of that goes back to Nancy, your point of like tracking it, seeing where those leads are coming from, definitively figuring out and taking out that ambiguity to then say, here is where, this not only is returning, but where we are getting the greatest value in that return. And that goes back again to what Jay and I frequently talk about, where we then go, let's just say ABC is returning the best. Well, obviously, that's what we're then going to double down on if that's producing good potential new clients for the firm. If XYZ is not, even on an organic side, well, we'll still keep it there, but it might be more of a back burner. It might be less of a priority, because we still want XYZ clients to come in. But the focus then will be off of ABC. There's no way any of us would know that without tracking leads.
Yep. Yep. 100%.
And it's something because again, I talk to all of PaperStreet's clients, so not just clients that don't even have marketing with us; they just have websites. And what I see that's very sad is a lot of times the solo practitioners end up shutting their doors. So I see a lot where the firms, they started with us, we designed their website, they didn't necessarily do marketing, and then they're like, oh, I have to close this website down because I'm joining this firm. And I have no doubts. I mean, I see it on the legal side. I know running a solo practice is very, very difficult. There's no denying that. And, it's something because my husband's a physician and he himself has said, I do not want to have my own practice. I do not want to run it. It's too much for me, things like that. So I do think that a large chunk of that is just the enormity of running things by yourself is a lot. But I can't help but feel that a lot of why solo practitioners do end up closing their doors is because they're not equipped to do the marketing for that. Because being a solo practitioner, you got to get your name out. You got to get your name out. You have to bang on doors a little bit more than others. And would you guys both agree that that's probably a large factor in the success rate of the solo practitioners?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, like, there's one of the mentors that I have is he says, look, when he started his firm, 50% of his time was marketing, networking. The other 50% was doing legal work. And I firmly believe like that's 100% of the deal. Like, you've got to be getting new clients in, because it's new clients, revenue, that's the lifeblood of the firm. Like, you've got to have that coming in. And it's there's no question about it. Marketing's got to be the priority as you start your firm, as you grow your firm. I think through every aspect of the life of your firm, like, marketing has got to be at the top, because when people need legal services, it's a moment in time, right? Especially if you're working with individuals. Like, business is a little bit different, but individuals, it's a moment in time where they need legal services. And the question is, are you top of mind?
Mhm.
And and if you're not, it's a missed opportunity. And so, that's what my philosophy is. Like, we need to be top of mind. Like, my networking, referral sources, I want to be top of mind. I want them to know when they send a referral over, we're going to be on the horn with that referral within less than 24 hours. My preference is minutes. As soon as they call, I like the phone to be picked up. And we're going to be talking to them about our consultation process and getting them scheduled. So yeah, I mean, that's marketing's got to be that is absolutely I think the reason why a lot of these firms, like you said, shut down before they get off the ground because the marketing is just not there.
It's funny, Jay, you say top of mind, I say this same thing, but I say why you? You know,
Hmm.
that's the thing I always say that
Yep.
Google is saying that, clients are saying that, everybody that, why you? Why you?
Hmm.
It's always and that's the thing that I do think that it's important for, to Nancy's point of maybe the accolades of a firm that might be out there. Somebody might have the best lawyer in the world, somebody might have all these accolades, but clients may or may not see that, and Google particularly may not see that,
Yep.
and so what are the ways can you be proving why you? Why you? Why you? Why your firm? Why is your firm the quintessential leader? What are we doing from, a content perspective that maybe answers the question that a potential user might have? Why, are we on that directory? Are we doing other things that other people are looking to find law firms and then they're finding you? So that's a question that we fundamentally like, almost like a common thread that we run through every single client is why you? But it does go back, I think again, you mentioned this point earlier, and I think it's a critical point because we do see it time and time again where there should be an aspect, I believe, of law school where it kind of delves into the even if somebody want to take it as an elective or like or a minor or something of like, like as opposed to their major of what they're focusing on or something, you could do a minor in like, almost like business development or business strategy or because I do think that, you again, it just makes me smile when I hear you say things like the phone rings and we pick it up within seconds.
Yep.
I mean, there are countless times we know firms where we can see analytically that it goes to abandoned calls or just simply doesn't get picked up. And to me, that's missed opportunities. That goes back to what we were all talking about before on tracking data and making sure that it's super important that we are as responsive as what our clients want us to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd say that the law school thing is crucial, because I think about it and I laugh. When I was in law school, I had to take administrative law. What are the chances I'm going to work with the EPA in my career? I had to take it. That was a required class of law school. Probably was never going to argue in front of the Supreme Court or deal with administrative law, the agencies of the government. But, why wasn't that an elective and have law firm business management be the required course? It truly, again, my law school was wonderful. I love my alma mater, but to me it's dumb. It's like you're preparing our students, your law students, for things that really small chance of them working for the EPA or arguing against the EPA, and yet do they know how to attract clients? Do they know how to record their clients? Things like that. And I do think that law schools rather, that should be as much a required course as crim law or tort law. The way we all take that. Why aren't we? Because again, when I meet with our clients, I'm like, when I tell them when they're talking about the content they write for the web, I'm like, I know you can write a legal brief. I'm sure you can write a very good motion, but what you're writing for the court or for get to your opponent is not at all what should be appearing on your website. And if you think that because you know one, you know the other, it's no disrespect to you, but
Yeah.
no, you just don't, because that will not get you in Google. That will not get you clients. You don't think that way,
No.
and I really think that that perception has to change. And I
Well,
think we've really hit some really great points about that. But Jay, I'm going to let you have the last word. What last bit of marketing advice would you give your fellow peers, your attorneys, and things like that in your experiences with PaperStreet, what marketing's worked for you? What do you think is the big takeaway from this podcast should be?
yeah, I think it's consistent and clear marketing. One of the things we didn't talk about is, as a solo practitioner, there's sort of an inclination when you first start to be all things to all people. And, I think working with Alex is we really, really sort of narrowed down like, hey, what is it? And again, go back to your question, why you? Like when you're marketing your firm, people need to, without question, think of you for one thing, like what you do, like employment law, or if you do personal injury, like they need to think of you for that, not like personal injury, trust and estates, and business training, like, because like you can't market that. Like, I mean, and the problem is, and this goes back to, I think, the law school thing, you get attorneys who, again, aren't really steeped in sort of how to market and run a business. Because, it's like when you think of Starbucks, like you think of great coffee or a great, some caffeinated beverage, right?
How I survive.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you think about that. I mean, that's great marketing, right? Like
Mhm.
Starbucks. Like you see the brand, the logo, and you know exactly from that moment like what that company's about, just in terms of like, because look, Starbucks, they do coffee. Like they do, the caramel macchiato. I don't know. I just do black coffee. Like that's me. But that's what, your law firm, like when they see Law Firm of J.W. Stafford, they employment law, right? None of this like we other stuff. Like this is what they need to think about. And that's why I encourage, every solo practitioner, when you're starting off and thinking about your marketing, being clear about what you do and consistent in terms of the marketing of that. That's my advice to, the solo practitioners and even lawyers in the firm. I like if you're in a firm, like you want to start, if you want to start sort of creating a niche, like create the niche and be consistent and clear to other members of the firm about what you do. Like that's, marketing 101. And again, I think Nancy, your point is right 100% about law schools. I mean, I was thinking about this, like my law school, they never, and I know it's different now because they've changed things, of course, but,
Mhm.
they never said a word about starting a law firm. I mean, it was all about like, you're going to go work at a law firm. Of course, we
Exactly.
have all these law firms here, and it's sort of like one of those things where I get it. It's an easy way to get your hiring numbers right. Go work at the law firm, and the numbers going to be great. It's easy, but
Mhm.
but if you're trying to really get these students prepared for, because look, and I know like this is going beyond our sort of podcast sort of agenda here, but you
No,
look at
absolutely.
down the road 10, 15 years from now, I mean, with AI and what that
Mhm.
could mean for legal services, it's more important than ever that you have a marketing strategy because AI is potentially going, and a lot of the older attorneys, I can see them now because they're just
Mhm.
like Jay, you don't know what you're talking, like AI is never
Mhm.
every AI is never going to replace me. And look, that may be true, but it's going to change the legal landscape, and it's changing it now. And and it's like one of those things where it's like if you're a lawyer, you need to have a marketing strategy to deal with that because clients, again, are going to be getting their information about, you know, questions related to the law and about who to hire. They're going to be getting it in a different way. And you've got to be prepared to kind of be at the forefront of that and to, again, have a marketing strategy. So again, going back to your point, Alex, why should they hire you versus another lawyer who, again, may be cheaper? Because look, there's lawyers out here willing to work for $2 an hour. I kid you not.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what is it you bring to the table for that client that's going to be different than the guy or gal down the street, across the street? Because there's a bunch of lawyers out here. What is it you bring that's different, that's going to bring value to that client? And that's what, again, every day we try to, we want to answer that question for our clients and our prospective clients. And again, that's why, love working with you guys and love the way that Alex pushes me in our meetings. Like, Jay, hey, what are we trying to accomplish? And like stick to our plan. Because, sometimes I can go off script, which which I sometimes do. But Alex reels me in, and that's what I love about working with him and the Paper Street team for sure.
Well, like we said, it's a collaboration because even if we do, I love the fact that we're always trying to think and broaden and kind of expand, because I mean, to your point, that is how you grow. But I do think it makes sense to, do it, strategically is probably the best
Yeah,
word. Going back to my, kind of being a student history analogy and stuff. It is all about the strategy and making sure that it's done, succinctly and properly and kind of like set up so that it's the best success for the firm. So.
yeah, yeah.
Jay, that was wonderful. I feel like that advice alone, we should hire you. Maybe you could sit in on the consultations with me. You could be the realism ship. I'm talking, but Jay, you're gonna hit them with reality.
Hey, I've got enough jobs right now. I don't need any more jobs. I don't need any more jobs. But no, I really
Well, let us
appreciate it.
know if you change your mind. But
Right.
Jay, thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining us. Your insight, I think, has been wonderful.
Yeah, thank
Hopefully,
you,
it
Jay.
resonates with the other attorneys that just quite aren't thinking this way. Alex, as always, thank you for joining me with your insights as well.
Of course.
Everyone, thanks for listening to us. This episode's available on YouTube and Spotify. Until next time, thank you, everyone.